on December 10, 1941, two Royal Navy warships, the HMS Prince of Wales and HMS Repulse, were sunk by Japanese aircraft off the eastern coast of Malaya. This battle is remembered in naval history as the moment that ended the era of battleship dominance. It was the first powerful demonstration that even the mightiest capital ships could be destroyed by air power on the open sea. From that moment on, it sounded the death knell of the big battleship, and the future of naval warfare was reshaped in favor of the aircraft carrier and air power. Yet, few remember that it was also in Malayan waters that another landmark naval engagement would be fought. On the night of 15th May 1945, beneath a still moonless sky, 5 British destroyers glided silently through the Straits of Malacca. Their prey, a lone Japanese heavy cruiser, Haguro, slipping south under cover of darkness. What unfolded was not a great carrier engagement or a naval airstrike, nor a submarine ambush. This was good old-fashioned naval combat, warships dueling bow to bow with guns and torpedoes. Fought less than 50 miles southwest of Penang, it became the final major surface naval battle of the Second World War. A clash that closed the chapter on a long era of naval warfare. This is the story of the Battle of the Malacca Straits. It is the end of the first week of May 1945, and the war in Europe was over. Hitler was dead. Berlin had fallen, and Nazi Germany surrendered unconditionally to the Allies. But in Asia, the conflict raged on. Japan, isolated and desperate, clung to its shrinking empire. The British, under Lord Mountbatten, had taken Rangoon and were advancing through Burma. The Japanese Navy, once dominant in the Indian Ocean, had been reduced to scattered remnants. Among those remnants was Haguro, a cruiser tasked with a final mission: to run supplies and evacuate troops from the embattled Andaman Islands. Launched in 1928 as one of the formidable Myoko-class heavy cruisers, the IJN Haguro displaced over 13,000 tons and mounted 10 8-inch guns. Early in the war, those guns carved a path of destruction across the Pacific that few other ships could match. She earned early infamy during the Battle of the Java Sea in 1942, where her long-lance torpedoes sent the Allied flagship De Ruyter and the destroyer Cortana to the bottom, while her guns helped cripple HMS Exeter. A veteran of pivotal clashes from Midway to Empress Augusta Bay, she miraculously survived the carnage of Leyte Gulf in 1944, trading blows with American escort carriers and destroyers off Samar, despite taking a bomb hit to her No. 2 turret. Haguro was powerful, But by May 1945, she was an aging anachronism in a war now dominated by air power. With the Imperial Japanese Navy reduced to scattered remains, this once mighty hunter was relegated to running desperate supply missions between Singapore and the Japanese garrison in the Andaman Islands. Escorting her was the destroyer Kamikaze, whose name was grimly fitting. It was on one such supply run, under a moonless sky in the Malacca Straits, that Haguro sailed unknowingly into a trap set by the Royal Navy. Unknown to the Japanese, British ultra-radio intercepts and submarine sightings had been carefully monitoring Haguro's movements for months. The British now assembled a surface strike fleet to hunt her down and called it Operation Dukedom. At 0600 hours on May 10, 1945, the 26th Destroyer Flotilla departed Trincomalee to carry out the strike. The force, led by Captain Manly Power of HMS Saumarez, consisted of 5 destroyers: Saumarez, Venus, Verulam, Vigilant, and Virago. Their orders were clear: find, intercept, and destroy Haguro. The flotilla sped east towards Penang. 2 days later, on 12 May, aircraft from the Royal Navy escort carrier HMS Shah bombed Japanese airfields in the Nicobar Islands, forcing Haguro to abandon her supply run. On May 15th, Haguro tried to run the gauntlet again. 3 Grumman Avenger bomber aircraft from No. 851 Squadron launched from the escort carrier HMS Emperor, and at 3:41 that afternoon made contact with Haguro near Sabang at the northern tip of Sumatra. The planes attacked, scoring a near miss and lightly damaging her forecastle. Haguro turned back once more, but the noose was tightening. Captain Power received details of Haguro's coordinates, course, and speed from the Avengers, and plotted an intercept about 45 miles southwest of Penang. At 10:45 that night, the radar operator aboard Venus detected a faint contact. Haguro was only 38 miles out. The destroyers were directly in her path. They slowed to 12 knots, letting Haguro come to them. The ships deployed into a crescent formation, a giant net into which Haguro would be caught. One of the British officers later remarked, "She was being led by the nose like a bull to the slaughter." By midnight, Haguro was just 13 miles from the center of the trap. The destroyers turned inward for the kill. Haguro was still unaware she was being surrounded. It was only at 54 minutes past midnight that Haguro spotted the danger. She turned 180 degrees and gunned her engines to over 30 knots. But it was too late. She had already entered the kill zone. HMS Saumarez fired the opening shots of the engagement, unleashing her 120mm radar-guided guns at just 3,000 yards towards Haguro's escort, Kamikaze. Haguro then opened up in defense, her 10 8-inch guns and 4 5-inch guns straddling Saumarez with towering waterspouts. A 5-inch shell from Haguro pierced Saumarez's boiler room, but, luckily for her, failed to explode. The engineer and petty officer gingerly tossed the dud shell overboard. However, An 8-inch shell then damaged the ship's radar, so Captain Power turned to his torpedoes and ordered a spread, aimed by eyesight and dead reckoning. HMS Verulam unleashed her torpedoes at the same time, and 8 torpedoes streaked into the darkness towards the distant flashes of Haguro's guns. Minutes later, 3 columns of orange flame were seen towering above Haguro's bridge. The crippled Haguro changed course, but wherever she turned, another destroyer lay waiting. Venus, Virago, and Vigilant each launched their own torpedo spreads. HMS Venus struck Haguro with 1 torpedo after moving into an attacking position from the west. HMS Virago hit her with 2 torpedoes, dealing a mortal blow that stopped the cruiser and caused her main deck to become awash. HMS Vigilant also scored a hit on the dying cruiser. At 2 minutes past 2, it was HMS Venus that finally delivered the final blow, hitting Haguro with 2 torpedoes from nearly point-blank range, just 500 yards. Haguro's guns were still firing when she finally slipped beneath the waves 4 minutes later, at 6 minutes past 2. The British destroyers, under threat of air attack, could not stay. Captain Power's victory was now secured, and he issued one last signal. Pick up survivors, stay no more than 10 minutes. That was too little time for anyone to be rescued. With British attention focused on Haguro, Kamikaze had earlier managed to escape the chaotic melee, withdrawing north towards Penang. She returned to the battle site an hour later and rescued between 320 and 400 survivors from the water. Over 900 crewmen had gone down with the Haguro, including her captain, Rear Admiral Kaju Sugiura, who was promoted to Vice Admiral posthumously. Also killed was Vice Admiral Shintaro Hashimoto, commander of Japan's 5th Cruiser Division, who had used Haguro as his flagship. On the British side, only HMS Saumarez suffered some light damage. 2 of her crew were lost. Haguro was the last major Japanese warship to be sunk in a surface action during the war. The Battle of the Malacca Straits was also the last gun and torpedo battle between surface ships in the war, taking place more than half a year after the Battle of Surigao Strait, fought between American and Japanese forces as part of the larger Battle of Leyte Gulf. Haguro had survived 200-pound bomb hits at Leyte Gulf. She was not so lucky in the Malacca Straits. Haguro's destruction virtually ended the Japanese naval presence in the Indian Ocean. British control over Malayan waters was also reasserted. And in his official report, Lord Louis Mountbatten called it an outstanding example of a night attack by destroyers. So ended not just a strategic mission, but a whole era of naval warfare. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, do consider giving it a like, sharing it with your family and friends, leaving your thoughts in the comments below, or subscribing to join me for the next episode of the Malayan Chronicles. Until then, cheerio!